Good morning, interns, and welcome to our intern workshop. I'm sorry, the second intern workshop, and this is the first workshop to be held in the morning. And good morning to my colleagues as well. So, my name is Tvang Sagola. I'm a manager in the CPD and registrations department, and we just thank you for joining us this morning. And please take note of the welcome message that is screen, since that is what will be directing our workshop today. And then please note that the presentation is divided into two parts. So I will be doing the first part, and my colleagues who are assessors and moderators of intern portfolio of evidence will be doing the second part. So we will also have a break. It will be 5 to 10 minutes, and it will depend on how we're doing with time. If we are okay, maybe it will be 10 minutes. If we are pressed, we will reduce it to 5 minutes. And again, there will be a survey at the end of the second presentation. Please make sure that you complete it, since it will be used as a proof of attendance. And then lastly, we are encouraging you to stay with us until the end of the workshop, because the information that we're going to share with you is very much important to help you navigate through internship. So we will appreciate if you can really make use of this opportunity. And thank you so much. Now we are moving on to our presentation. Okay, so I'm sharing the slides. I hope you colleagues can see. So this is the program for the day. The welcome I've already done, and then so we will have the introduction to pre-registration, which is what I will be facilitating, and then there will be pre-registration evaluation, which will start from 9:35. And it will be facilitated by assessors and moderators. And there will be a short break. If we are doing well with time, the break will be between 20 to 11 and 10 to 11. And then from there, we will continue with our the presentation by assessors and moderators until 20 to 12. Then we will open for question and answers. And then from there, we will close our workshop at 12 o'clock. So this is the outline of my presentation. We will look at the legal framework, pre-registration evaluation, and then we will also navigate the SAPC website. We'll focus more on the intern page, and then from there we will look at some of the issues that result in interns being delayed from being released from internship. And then we will also look at the portfolio of evidence, the reassessment or the appeals procedure. And then we will also look at what constitute unprofessional conduct. And then from there, we will share with you the 2023 and 2024 portfolio of evidence competency statistics. And then we will also take you through how to apply for community services. It will just be in brief, because there will be a workshop that will be arranged during the course of the year. And lastly, you will see the contact details for the office. So here, I'm not really going to dwell much on the slide, because you are already registered as interns. So this slide is mostly focusing on registration requirements. And since when you have met those requirements, we will pass it. And then in the next slide, you just have to note that your scope of practice is the same as the scope of practice of a pharmacist, and the only difference is that you are doing it under supervision of your tutor. So that's what you need to know, and that's why you need always to make sure that you get approval for each and every activity that you're engaging on. And then interns who are in manufacturing and academia, they are also required to complete 400 hours of supervised practice in an approved community or institutional pharmacy. And when you are doing the 400 hours of supervised practice training, please make sure, remember that your tutor is still responsible for your internship, and make sure that you make prior arrangements so that your tutor is also in the know and can give you the necessary permission. And then again, it's also required that when you're doing the 400 hours, you spend at least 5 consecutive days in the pharmacy, and make sure that you keep records. And then when you're done, your supervising pharmacist is also required to submit a progress report online. So just make sure that all those things are met so that they don't end up delaying you from being released. And then there is also what we call a session of contract. So here it's when an intern maybe and the tutor wants to terminate their contract. It can be based on different reasons. So in case there is a need for you to terminate your contract with your tutor, maybe your tutor is leaving to another facility, or maybe you are to change facilities. What is important for you to note is that you need to submit an online application, and then you provide a contract which you have signed with the new tutor, and there is a fee also that you need to pay. And please make sure that your application reach the office at least 7 days prior to the session date, in order to allow us to process your application and make sure that by the date you are approved. And then there are pre-registration evaluation requirements that you are expected to meet in order to be released for community service. So the first requirement is that there is a pre-registration examination that you are expected to write, and that will be written on an online platform. Again, there is a portfolio of evidence that you are required, where you are required to submit 6 entries on the CPD system. And there are progress reports that must also be submitted by your tutor online. And lastly, you need to to complete 365 days of supervised practical training. So with the examination, it is made up of 120 questions, and there is 1 mark for each. And please note that the exam consists of the general practice, which is 70% of the exam, and the calculations, they are accounting for 30% of the exam. And then with the portfolio of evidence, interns are required to submit 6 entries and 1 competency standard per domain. And please note that for domain number 5, competency standard 5.3 is compulsory. So in your manual, we have mentioned other competency standards, but those are not applicable for you during the year of internship, but only when you are practicing as pharmacists. And then what is important for you to note here is that we have provided the schedule for the submission of portfolio of evidence entries in your manual. Please make sure that you familiarize yourself with the dates there. And what you need to know is that there are dates where we're expecting you to submit. There are dates where you must expect the office to release your results. And upon receipt of your result, please make sure that you open the entry and you check whether you are successful or not. And in case you are not successful, please make sure that you go through the assessor's comments, you address them fully, and you resubmit your entry for reassessment. So that should be done until you are successful in that particular entry. So for you to be competent in CPD, you are expected to be successful in all 6 entries. And then with regard to the progress reports, interns who are in institutional and community sectors are expected to submit 6 progress reports, and those in manufacturing are expected to submit 9 progress reports. And in addition to that, the declaration of 400 hours. Interns in academia, they submit 3 progress reports and declaration of 400 hours, and also a proof of achievement of the master's qualification. And sorry, please note that the progress reports need to be favorable in order for us to be able to release you once you have met all the internship requirements. And remember the 365 practical days that you must complete in your pharmacy under supervision of your tutor. So these are the deadlines that I was referring to, which you need to familiarize yourselves with. So what is happening is we have provided you the submission deadline for the portfolio of entries. So meaning all entries that are submitted by that date will be assessed and then all entries that are submitted by that date and verified by the date that is provided there will be assessed and released on the date that we have provided there as the SAPC release results. So anything that is submitted, for example, let's use this one of the next submission deadline, which will be on the 24th of February. So anything that is submitted by the 24th of February and it is verified by your tutor by the 28th of February, then you must expect your results to be released by the 21st of March. In case you miss the submission deadline and you submit on the 25th of February, it's okay, but don't expect your results to be available on the 21st of March, but instead you will receive your results on the 25th of April. So it's important to take note of that. And there's no way the office can fast track your results. Just make sure that you submit on the deadlines and you adhere to those days so that you can get your results on the date you want. And then again on the deadlines, if you can see, we have also provided you with the examination dates. So interns who wants to sit for the date for the exam that is scheduled for the 4th and the 5th of March. So obvious this will be interns from 2024. They are required to, they should have received their CPD, the POE results by now and booked for the exams. So if you missed that, the submission deadline of the 29th of Jan and you are not yet meeting the exam requirements, then there's no way you will receive your results anytime between now and the date of the exam. So it means you will only be able to sit for the August exams. So just take note of those last submission deadlines before the exams. And if you are not meeting the POE requirements by that time, then target the next exam date. So there is a message there on the right for you to note that according to council that we are having the appeal policy that is also provided in your tutor manual on page 33. I'm sorry, these deadlines are provided on page 33, but you will also find the appeals policy in your manual. Please make sure that you familiarize yourself with it. And then entries that are submitted, entries must be submitted by 12 p.m. of the last date of submission for them to be considered for that particular cycle. So if you fail to submit by 12 p.m., your entries might not be part of that cycle, meaning you might not receive the results on the scheduled date. And then we are also advising you to make sure that you submit your 6 POE within the first 6 months so that you don't get yourself missing the opportunity to sit for the pre-registration examinations. And then lastly, please note that entries submitted after the 28th of November 2025 will only be assessed in January 2026. And then interns are given 3 opportunities to submit after they have submitted the 6 entries, meaning they can resubmit only for 3 on 3 opportunities. If they fail to meet the requirements, then they will have to pay, meaning from the 10th submission of a portfolio of evidence entry, then the intern will have to pay a fee of 360 and for them to be assessed. So please take note of that and make sure that you try your best to avoid being affected by these penalties. And then here are the dates of the workshops. So we are going to conduct the feedback workshops in the middle of the year, during June and July. And then that's where the assessors will be sharing with you some of their experience, their assessment experience, and also to guide you on how to improve the quality of the portfolio of evidence that you're submitting. And then also we have provided you with the dates of the examinations, and they are also there in your manual. So please make sure that for you to be able to sit for the pre-registration examination, you are required to participate in the practice examination. So we have already had the practice examination for the 28th of January. This was to assist interns who wanted to sit for the 4th and the 5th of March examination. So we will be having another practice examination in June and in September, and those dates are provided in your examination. Then also, please, it's important to note that you need to do the bookings online before the closing date. And then there is also a late booking fee that you will be expected to pay if you book late after the normal booking dates have closed. And then here are the exam entrance requirements. So interns in their 6 month of internship are required to have submitted at least 6 portfolio of evidence entries online and be successful in at least 3 entries. And then they must have completed the practice examination, and their tutors must have submitted at least 3 progress reports. And then in that case, they will be able to book for the exams. And then interns in their 9th month of internship, they are expected to be successful in all 6 portfolio of evidence entries. They should have completed the practice examination, and then they must have submitted 4 progress reports, and the system will then allow them to book for the examination. And then in case of the reattempting of the examination, in this case, the interns will be expected to be successful in all 6 POE entries. And then the tutors must also have submitted the relevant progress reports according to the intern's date of registration. So this is important. And please note that there is no exam fee for the first and the second attempt, and interns will be expected to pay a fee of 2,703 when they booking for the third attempt and then tutors will have access to interns' overall results. So please take note of that. And then now we are moving on to the second part of this presentation, which is the navigation of the website. So this is where you will be able to access your secured site. So the Farm Council is the address that you will be using to access our website, and then you're going to select registered person in order to be able to access this page. And then here, this page you can access without logging in. You can be able to view the intern manual. You can be able to view the scope of practice, the CPG page. You can see all these things without logging in to your secure site. But for you to log on to your secure site, there is the login tab there. That's where you must click, and then that will take you to the secured site. And then when you are on the secured site, you will be expected to put your login details. And once you have done that, then you will be able to access the landing page. And then for you to access the CPD page, you will have to click where it is written CPD. And then when you are on this page, then because you will be logging in for the first time, the system will require you to do the annual declaration. So just click on go to annual declaration, and then it will take you on the annual declaration page, and then there will be a number of questions that you are required to answer. Please make sure that you follow the instruction. And what's important for you to note is that the scope of practice of a pharmacist is also provided there in case you want to refer as you are completing the annual declaration. Just click on it, and then you will have access to the full scope of practice. So this annual declaration is made up of 3 parts. That is the employment details, the domain competencies, and the assessment criteria. So you will be required to complete all the 3 parts. And then once you are done, then the system, it will take you to this page wherein it will indicate that according to your competencies, you are a practicing pharmacist. Then if you agree, then you will be designated a practicing pharmacist. So in case here, maybe you have selected under domain competencies, you're saying you don't do anything that the system will be asking you, then it will designate you non-practicing. And in case you want to correct it, we're expecting all interns to be practicing. Just disagree, and it will take you back to that page and redo the annual declaration. So when you are on this page, then at least it shows that you have completed it is a yes. Then you will be able to access the CPD page once you have done the annual declaration. And then this is the landing page of the CPD platform. So we're using the same platform as pharmacists, and then that's why there will be other things that are not applicable for you as interns. So on the landing page, you will see a page like this. When you click on my submission, it will show you CPDs that you have already submitted. And then in your case, if you have not yet submitted anything, then you won't find anything there. And then when you click on the CPD cycle, it will show you the CPD cycle, and the CPD cycle will be explained for you so that you are able to submit your entries with a better understanding. And then there is the domains and competencies. So these are the 6 domains that I was talking about. They are also provided there. If you click on that tab, you will be able to access them. And then there is the archive is not applicable for you. It will be in use once you are done with your internship. And then here also, as you're submitting your CPD entries, you can be able to view the progress. Like in case of this person has submitted, you can see there are different color codes showing that this person has submitted is competent or not competent. So you will familiarize yourself with it. And then, so here it's when you're clicking on the submission button, I said it will show you all the entries that you have submitted, and it will also show you the status of each entry. So in case, like I said, in your case, if you haven't submitted anything, there won't be any entry there, but the make sure that you understand the terminology: submitted for compliance, submitted for verification by tutor, submitted for moderation. So these terminologies are explained in your manual. Please make sure that you go through them so that you can understand when it says your entry submitted for compliance, and also you know which status you expect after you have submitted your entry for verification by your tutor. And then here, remember I said when you click on the CPD cycle, it will take you to the 4 steps of the CPD cycle. So this is the first step, and then you can go through them before you start submitting your CPD entry so that you can understand what is required of each step. And then there was also a tab of domain and competencies. So when you click on it, this is what you will see. So it will show you the 6 domains. And when you click on any of those domains, it will give you more details on that domain. For example, here I've selected domain 6. So it will give you more information on domain 6 and its competencies. And then, so basically that's what you will get on the before. I mean, that's what you need to do before you can start submitting your CPDs, so that you have a full understanding of the different domains, and that will also help you to select the competencies that are more applicable to your setup. So this year we have introduced what we call the plagiarism detection. It was never there before, so you are the first group that you're going to experience it. So this is the process that will be followed when you're submitting your CPD or your POE entry for plagiarism detection. Is provided in your manual. So I will take you through the steps, not short, not long. But what I want you to understand is that you will be expected to submit each of your portfolio of entry for plagiarism detection before it can be submitted for tutor verification. And also note that a similarity score that is greater than 20%, I mean, if the similarity score is greater than 20%, then you need to review your entry, because according to us, it is higher. The acceptable similarity score is between 0 and 20. So anything above 20, please make sure that you review your entry before you can submit for assessment, for verification by your tutor. And then, so here is the process of submitting your entry. So this is how the page will look like when you're doing the reflection. You will see the criteria there on top. This is the criteria that the assessors will use to assess your entry. So please make sure that you check the criteria. And we are going to update the criteria because there were some changes made. I think by next week, the criteria will be updated. Please take note of that. And then from there, you're just going to follow the instruction. You will do your first step, that is reflection. If you're happy, you have provided all the information that is required, then you just save, and then it will ask you whether you want to move on to the next step. If you are happy, you will just select yes, then it will take you to the next step, that is planning. And then when you are on planning, you just do the same. There will be the criteria for assessment of the planning step. And then you provide your information there, and then From there, if you have provided everything, you just click yes, and then it will take you to the implementation step, and then you do the same. And then please note that when you are at the implementation step, when you save, you will be requested to upload your evidence. So the evidence will be uploaded at this step. Then you just click on the upload documents, and then the documents will be uploaded. And then you will also be able to see, you will be able to choose the file that you want to upload. And then once it has been uploaded, you will be able to see it. Please just make sure that you open it, you view it, and make sure that you have uploaded the correct evidence. In case it's not correct, you can still remove it and go to the correct evidence to upload. And then once you have done that, you just click on next, and then it will take you to the evaluation step, which is the last step of CPD cycle. And then at this step, you will respond. There will be the assessment criteria on top again, and then you provide all the information that you want to submit. And then it will ask you to save and continue later, or to save and submit for similarity check. So you can save your entry if you still want to come back and relook at it. But if you are happy with everything that you have provided, then you can still submit for similarity check. And then once you have submitted for similarity check, you will see this window wherein it says accept EULA here at the bottom. So they have provided all the conditions. And then if you agree, you will just say, yes, I agree, and submit. And then once you have accepted the EULA, then you will be able to submit for similarity check. And then, so it will show the entry that is there, and then you just click for similarity check. And then once you have submitted for similarity check, you will see this page, or this window here, wherein you will see this thing moving, just to show that the report is being submitted, and then it's being evaluated for similarity, and it will say waiting for report to be generated. So at that stage, you can, if you have time to wait, you can wait. If you want to take care of something, you can leave it, and then you can view the report at a later stage. So when the report is ready, you will see this the view report tab here. Then you just click on that, and then the report will be open. You will be able to see the summary report here, and then which will show you that the report status here will show that it's complete, meaning the evaluation of your entry for similarity check is complete, and then you can then be able to view how the report is by clicking on the open PDF report. And then once you have opened the report, you will be able to see how you'll be able to see the similarity percentage there. And like I said, if it's above 20, please go back to your entry and see things that need to be things that you can maybe correct in order for you to get the acceptable similarity score. And then, so meaning after you have viewed the report, you will be able to go back to this initial page, wherein you will go to my submission if you want to rework on your entry, and then it will allow you to make changes. So you'll be able to access all the 4 steps of a CPD cycle. And then when you are happy, you can click the submit for similarity check again, and then it will be submitted. And then sometimes you might find that the report is not available immediately. And then in that case, you must go to my submission and click on similarity check report here. And then that might take you to it will refresh the system and then you'll be able to eventually find your report. So the report would look like this. It shows the overall score here is 2%. It means this person did well and then can then continue to submit the entry for verification. And then when you go for a detailed report, the PDF report that I've showed you, where you click open the PDF report, the report will look like this. And the areas which were detected to be similar to the CPD entries that were submitted by other interns before will be highlighted in blue. So in case your similarity score is high, those are the areas that you need to work on. So, so then once you have done your report, I think you follow the process here and resubmit for similarity check, and then the system will then take you to the step which you are it will take you to the submit for verification by the tutor. And then from there, once the tutor is happy, then the entry will go for assessment by the assessors and then it will also be moderated. So once your POE has went through all the steps and now the results are to be released. The results are released. So when you go onto your secure site on the CPD page, you will see you will see your entry with the status submitted for compliance. So this means that your entry has been submitted, it has been assessed, it has been moderated, it has been, the results are ready. And then when you click on that submitted for compliance, then you will get a full information regarding how you did with your entry. So it will show you all the details in terms of the submission and the verification. And then from there, it will show you that the assessment status there is so successful. So it's important to check for this status because this is where you need to, if you are successful, then you know you are okay, then you can focus on other entries. And then if it's saying unsuccessful, it means you still need to work on it. So don't just see submitted for compliance without really opening it and decide that you are successful. The status can be successful or unsuccessful. And then in both instances, you will see there will be a report there. You need to open that report because the assessor would have made comments. Even if you are successful, the assessor may make comments for you to take note of with the other CPDs or the portfolio of entries that you are still going to submit. And then in case you are unsuccessful, then those are the comments that will assist you to correct where you need to. And then this is how it will look like. In case you are unsuccessful, the status here, it will show not yet successful. And you can see the status has changed to awaiting submission. It's no longer submitted for compliance like the way it is when you are successful. And then the report will also be provided there. And then for you to start working on your CPD entries, you just click on the reflection and then it will take you back to the 4 steps of your entry. And then when you are done, then you will submit for the tutor to verify. But if you want your entry to go, for verification, what do we call this? For similarity check, then you will be yeah, I think this is something that we are working on. In case of a resubmission, there will be another tab where it will say submit for tutor verification. I mean, for similarity check first. And then when you are happy, then you will submit for tutor verification. I'm sorry, there were some challenges with that page. We are busy with it. Once it's sorted, then you will be able to resubmit for tutor verification. And then these are some of the issues that delays release from internship. So, which I've already mentioned, if you meet all the requirements, then you won't have any issues. You submit, I mean, being successful in your 6 POEs, submitting your progress reports, completing the 365 days of practical training, and also making sure that you are successful in the pre-registration examination. Again, these are some of the things that can lead you to be disappointed if you don't really comply with the requirements for portfolio of evidence when you do your submissions. This can be avoided by making sure that you start submitting on time, you do your corrections in case you are unsuccessful, and you still submit on time. And then in that case, you won't really have to experience all these disappointments. And then there are a number, I mean, there are queries that interns are submitting when they are having challenges with their portfolio of evidence entries. So please make sure that you use the correct platform. And it's important to make sure that in the previous years, parents of interns and other family members were contacting the office regarding the portfolio of evidence of their kids. Please avoid from sharing our details with our parents, because when they contact the office, they're failing to give us the information that we need to assist you. So to avoid that, because now it becomes a waste of time for us to deal with them since they don't have all the information. So please make sure that you do your part, take responsibility of your internship. You are matured, you can handle everything. That's why you are registered as interns. There's nothing hard. It's just for you to be confident and be able to approach the office for help when necessary. And then on page 42 of the manual, we have provided you with the process that you need to follow in case you want to ask for a reassessment or remarking of your entry. Request for a consultation with an assessor. Please make sure that you look at that process and follow it in case you need any of those services. And then we have seen some unprofessional conducts from some of the interns. And then we felt we need to make you aware that pressurizing assessors and moderators to assess your portfolio of evidence entries is considered as an unprofessional conduct. So make sure that you plan your things properly, you submit on time so that you don't have to pressurize anybody. And then some, they go to an extent of even threatening assessors and moderators. So those are unprofessional conduct. And the other one, plagiarizing of the present and past POEs is also not acceptable. So please take note of this conduct and make a note that the office takes this serious, and there will be serious disciplinary actions taken against you. That has been done with the previous interns. So just make sure that you don't really find yourself in this situation. And then on this slide, I'm just sharing with you how the 2024 interns performed in terms of their portfolio of evidence as compared to the 2023 interns. So we have observed a great improvement, because for the 2023 interns, they are represented by the orange color there on the graph. So we had a 69% compliance in January 2024 for the 2023 cohort of interns, and then there was a 29% of interns who were unsuccessful in 6 CPD entries. So I'm sorry, the orange color is for the unsuccessful interns, and the blue color represent those who were competent in the portfolio of entries. So there was a great improvement from 69% in 2023 to 80% improvement in 2024. So we are encouraging you to put effort. It is doable, and we trust that you can even take up the 80%. You know, our wish is to see all interns being successful in 6 CPD or POE entries by the end of the year. So our aim here is to have it at the 100% compliance, one day, and we know we will reach it. So please do your part to make it possible. And then important information here for you to note is that the annual fees are payable by the 1st of June each year, which is 711 for 2025. And then please remember internship is should be completed within 12 months. In case you are unable to, make sure that you request for extension of your contract or you find another place to continue with your internship. And then intern progress is always made available on the Intern Secure site. And then we also sharing that with the employer and also with the tutor and the Department of Health. And then applying for community service, the community service program is facilitated by the Department of Health, and there is a link there for the ICSP platform, where the whole process is being handled. Please make sure that you familiarize yourself with that link, with the platform, so that you're having information on what is happening, when to start applying for community service and so forth. And then here, that's how you can contact us from the office. Please make sure that you submit your query, and then it's always important to state your PIN number when you're submitting a query to the office, so that we know who we are assisting. And then there is also an email address there which you can use to contact us. And always remember the operating hours of the office. And then the other thing to note is that it takes the office 7 days to attend to queries. So please don't be patient with us, and then we will try to address them within as soon as possible. But if you're not getting the response immediately, please just note that we are on it. We just need more time to assist you. And then this brings us to the end of my presentation. We are not going to do the question and to take any question now. Please keep them and use the chat functionality to submit the questions. We will only address them when the time is right. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague to continue with the next presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Adele Nadia speaking. I'm one of the assessors for Pharmacy Council. And Tabang, thank you very much for your presentation. I will now be taking you through the next part of our presentation, where we will look at the CPD submission, or the portfolio of evidence submission itself. With me is Dr. Yanda Joubert, and the two of us will be sharing the presentation with you this morning. So first of all, what are we looking at this morning? So the outline for our presentation, we will look at the competency standards. And as Tabang mentioned, there's some um, terminology that you have to be familiar with. We will be looking at the portfolio of evidence, which includes the cycle, the assessment. We have an example for you, and we will be talking about evidence. Then we will look at the assessment and feedback that you will receive from your assessor. We will look at professionalism, confidentiality, and then we will be looking at a few challenging competency standards and give you some guidance on what we as assessors and moderators suggest for you to submit to be competent in your CPDs. So first of all, we are going to look at important resources for you as an intern. You can find everything in your intern manual, so it's very important for you to download the manual, read through the manual before you start with your portfolio of evidence, and you will be able to find everything there. So what's very important for your portfolio of evidence submissions is, first of all, the criteria for an entry. You can find that on page 35 to page 37 of the manual. Then we will also look at the portfolio of evidence entry checklist that you can find on page 41 to page 42. You can find the competency standards, and we will look at that, what exactly that is. You can find that on page 62 to 84 of the manual. And then you don't uh, um, forget about your tutor, which is also a very important resource for you guys, as well as the Pharmacy Council website, where you can find various resources that you can use to submit as part of your CPD entry. So the terminology, as Tabang has mentioned some of these already, we have the domain, we have the competency standard, and then we have behavioral statement. It's very important for you to familiarize yourself with these terminologies, because sometimes you will get feedback from your assessor and moderator, and we will be using these to guide you with your CPD entry. I will be talking about each of these individually, and I will show you how they fit into one another if we look at an example from the manual. So first of all, there you can see a competency framework example. And if you look at the headings, the first one, the big one, and you remember you have to select one entry from each domain. So if you look at the first one, this is the example of domain 2, which is about safe and rational drug use. Then underneath the domain or within the domain, we have various competency standards. And you can see that is the next level. If you look at 2.1, that's patient counseling or consultation, 2.2 patient counseling, and we go up to 2.8. Then if we look at the third tier, you will see we have various behavioral statements within a competency standard. So it's important for you to have a look at this terminology. So you'll remember you have to select one entry or one competency standard within each domain. Then you will have to address the behavioral statements, and then we will talk about how many behavioral statements you have to address within each competency standard. So you can see the behavioral statements within the competency standard differs. Some have only one, some have 7, some have 9, but we will be talking about that a little bit later. So as I said, there are 6 domains, and you will remember you have to do one submission within each domain. And then the domains can be described as organized clusters of competencies. So as you remember, a domain has various competency standards, and each competency standard has behavioral statements. So when we look at the competency standards, as we said, it's part of a domain. So first of all, you have to go and read the domain, decide how does this apply to you, and decide does it apply to me as an intern. You have to read the introduction within the domain, go and have a look at the competency standards, the behavioral statements, and remember you are an entry level within your practice, so that's year 1 to 3. From there on, you move to intermediate practice, and after that, advanced. So if you have been practicing more than 7 years, you will go into advanced practice, and there is a tick box as well. So just to refer to the terminology again, if you look in your internship manual and you look in domain 2, you will find 2.6, which is the competency standard. And you can see that 2.6 has 4 behavioral statements. So you can have a look. If you work in an environment where you actually do pharmacist-initiated therapy, then 2.6 will be applicable to you as an intern, and you will be able to achieve the behavioral statements. So this is just the bigger picture. If we look at the whole structure of the competency standard within the domain, so as I mentioned previously, we have domain 2, safe and rational use of medicine and medical devices. We have the introduction that I've spoken about. We have 8 competency standards within the domain. And as you can see for 2.6, which is a competency standard, we have 4 behavioral statements. So I'm sure you are now familiar with the various terminology, and it will be easy for you to select your activity. So back to the beginning, what is continuing professional development? So for your information, just to make sure that a portfolio of evidence is the activity that you will be doing on the CPD platform. So each activity is referred to as a portfolio of evidence, and you have to submit 6 of those. So for students and interns, you have to do these activities to show that you are competent in doing your activities. So what is continuing professional development? You can see that it is a cycle. So you first reflect on what you need to learn. Then you decide how you're going to do this, and then you do your activity. So the definition, it's a process by which registered persons, you are registered as an intern, enhance your competency throughout your career. So you have identified a learning need, and the cycle is how you address that learning need. So it encompasses a range of activities, including education, training, reading. You can do a variety of activities to address your learning need, and a CPD enables us as registered persons to develop our practice and our competence. So very important, we have to talk about the cycle, the CPD cycle. So we start at reflection. So something happens in a pharmacy and you realize that this is a learning need for you. Then we plan. Then we do the activity, we implement the planning, and lastly, we evaluate. And then you can see through the evaluation, we can then again go to reflection and identify a new learning need. So we will be going through each of these within the cycle, and we will be looking in more detail at each of these steps within the cycle. And remember, you have to complete the whole cycle and include your evidence to be successful in your portfolio of evidence activity. So very important, the assessment of these phases. We will be looking at the checklist and the criteria as well. I have mentioned that. And when we look at it, you can see if you assess your own CPD or you look at your own portfolio of evidence activity and you use the checklist and you use the criteria to evaluate your own activity, it is possible for you to be successful and competent in your first submission. But we will have a look at that now. Please make sure that if you submit your activity, it's free of spelling and grammatical errors, it's properly punctuated, you've capitalized trademarks, you've used the legislation correctly. Please remember that Pharmacy Council's website doesn't autocorrect. So what I usually tell my interns is do your activity in a Word document, make sure that there's no spelling mistakes, that there's no errors, and then you can just copy it into or onto the CPD platform. So we will always aim for 3 marks, and I will show you in the criteria assessment criteria now, and you will understand what we mean when we say to earn the 3 marks, and we are looking for 3 marks for you to be successful as an intern. The range does go from 0 to 3. 0 is not yet met, where 3 is fully met. And for all interns, we hope that you strive for number 3 in all your submissions, and I will show you how to use the checklist. Again, go and have a look at your manual. So always have your intern manual next to you when you are doing your portfolio evidence activities. So first of all, we're going to start with the reflection. That is step 1. And before you, now you've decided what your learning need is, and you have to give an appropriate title to your activity. It's very important to own your title, to make it your own title and describe your own activity. So if you look at the slide, it should be relevant to what you want to learn. It should describe what you are intending to do. Please do not copy the wording of the competency standard, and it must be your own unique learning title. But we will be talking about that a little bit more in the example as well, and you can have a look at what a good title is. So your title should describe your own unique activity. If we think about 2.6 that we've spoken about, your title will not be pharmacist-initiated therapy, because that is a direct copy of the competency standard. We will think about something like providing pharmacist-initiated therapy to a patient with asthma. So you can hear there, it describes my activity and exactly what I am going to do. So reflection, now we have a learning title, and then we're going to the reflection part itself. So ask yourself, what do I need to learn? How do I know that's what I need to learn? And what will I do with what I have learned? So you can see this is already a guide for what should be incorporated in your reflection. And this is the criteria that I was talking about. If you look at the learning title, so we always aim for the biggest one. So we're looking at number 1. It should be original, descriptive, and related to the competency standard. So you can see it should be your own words, describe your activity, and relate to the competency standard. Now we are looking at our learning need, and we're not aiming for a 0, we are aiming for a 3. And there you can see we have a clear learning need according to the competency standard and behavioral statements, and the trigger scenario. In other words, what happened, what made me realize that I need to learn this, and the indication of what you hope to achieve after completing this activity. So there you can see, if we aim at a 3, you can see what should be included. So if you use this as an assessment rubric, you can already see, have I included all these steps? So make sure that your learning need is personal. I need to learn this. I need to be able to do this. So be careful not to describe the learning need, for example, of the patient. So if we go back to 2.6, say a patient comes in with asthma, wanting pharmacist-initiated therapy, your learning need is not educating the patient what is safe to use with his asthma. Your learning need will be to provide effective pharmacist-initiated therapy to a patient with asthma. But we will talk about that again. Again, your learning need must be related to the outcome that you've selected. So if you selected pharmacist-initiated therapy, your reflection should align with learning and being able to provide pharmacist-initiated therapy. So I've spoken about the assessment criteria for the reflection already. And please do not aim for a 0 or a 1, always aim for a 3. And there you can see a clear learning need, a trigger scenario. So what happened to make you realize that you needed to learn this? And lastly, what do you hope to achieve after addressing or after learning this? What do you hope to achieve? What's the bigger picture in relation to the competency standard? There's also a checklist. So first of all, use the checklist when you are creating your CPD, and then use the assessment criteria to assess your own activity just before you submit. So first of all, is there a title? Is it short, specific, and related to the competency standard? Is it concise and in my own words? So if you can check yes for all of those, you will know you will get a 1 for your title. If you look at the fraction, have I clearly stated what I need to learn? Did I say I needed to learn this? The next one, have I identified the learning need for myself? And have I not included any planning or implementation here? So you can see if you use the checklist, you know what should be there is included, and then you use the assessment criteria to make sure that you have addressed all the aspects that should be included in the reflection. So now I've identified my learning need. I know what I want to achieve. So the next thing I have to do is I have to plan. How am I going to achieve my learning need? So very important, don't only describe how you plan to proceed, but say what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? Why are you going to do this? And when are you planning to do this? Remember, your assessor and your moderator is not in the pharmacy with you. So you have to give them sufficient information to understand what this activity is about, to understand what you are planning to do, and how you are addressing your learning need. So look at how am I going to do this? What's my options? So now it's very important, refer back to the behavioral statements. Because remember, the behavioral statements are what you are actually going to provide evidence for in the next stage. So first of all, mention all the resources that you are going to use. Include a reason why you chose that resource. And think about what's the evidence that I can submit to support my learning need. Very important. Planning is in the future tense, and you will say, I plan to consult the GPP section 2.1.8 because that is where I can find the minimum standards for compounding, for example, and then link that to a behavioral statement. So exactly show the assessor and moderator which resource, which section within that resource, why have you chosen that resource, and link that to a specific behavioral statement to make sure that you've provided sufficient planning for every behavioral statement. Again, you can see the assessment grid, and we always aim for a 3. You can see you've provided a detailed plan in future tense, the reason why you chose the resource, the specific detail of the resource, and you've linked to at least 75% or above of the behavioral statements. It's always better to ensure or to try and address all the behavioral statements. Sometimes it happens that you think that you've addressed the behavioral statement, but it was not addressed fully. But if you've addressed all of them, you can make sure that you've addressed at least 75% of the behavioral statements, and we will be talking about the sufficiency of the evidence shortly. So remember, for evidence, which resource, the section within the resource, why that resource, and link it to your behavioral statement. We've spoken about this already, and I'm not talking about a 0 because we always aim for a number 4. Detailed planning provided in future tense. There's a reason for the resource. There's specific detail for the resource, and you have linked it to the behavioral statement. So you can clearly see if you use the checklist and you use the assessment grid, there's no way that your descriptions and your activity will not be sufficient. So please make use of these references and these resources. They are very valuable. So planning, there's the checklist again. So make sure that you can tick yes for everything before you submit to your tutor to check. The third step of the cycle is the implementation. Remember, we now planned in the future tense, and now we tell the assessor and the moderator what we did. So now we're moving over to the past tense. So we describe what we actually did. So we provided the context for what, where, when, how. I conducted a public health campaign on the 7th of March in the wherever you did that. So what, where, when, and how. You link it to the evidence. So If you say you conducted a public health campaign or you did compounding, link it to your evidence. Remember to include all the behavioral statements of the chosen outcome, and your implementation is written in the past tense. Remember, you completed your activity. So I did this, I consulted this reference, I made a poster, everything that you did in the past tense. So tell your story personal. I did this. I consulted my tutor. I consulted the World Health Organization, this document or that document, or the SAMF, or what the case may be. Implementation should link to the evidence, but we're going to talk about evidence a lot more later in the presentation. And again, the assessment criteria, which is very important for you guys to make sure that you've included everything. So again, we aim for a 3, description of what, where, when, and how, and references made to the evidence, and it links to at least 75% of the behavioral statements. Again, you can see if you use this, there is no way that you will not be successful if you evaluate your own activity before you submit and make sure that you've included all the criteria that should be included for the implementation phase. You can see in the manual as well, there's a grid for evidence. We will be speaking a lot more about evidence just now in the presentation, but I'm going to look at number 3 again. We have valid, authentic, current, sufficient evidence annotated to show the behavioral statements and how it is satisfying the behavioral statements. So you can see we aim for a 3 again, and I will now be talking about what is valid, what is authentic, what is current in the next few slides. So always aim for the highest and make sure that you have addressed everything that is mentioned in the criteria. Again, we have an implementation checklist, so make sure that you can check yes for everything. Have I described what I did? Yes. Have I written in the past tense? Yes. So make sure that you use the checklist. Very important, your implementation must support the evidence. So you need to link the implementation of what you did to the evidence to show where you did it, how you did it. And there is where the evidence becomes very important, because the evidence should tell the story of what you did. Evidence, there's the checklist, but we will be speaking about evidence a lot more. So have I checked that I have sufficient? Have I annotated it? Have I annotated it and linked it to the behavioral statement? So make sure that you check yes, or are able to check yes for everything in the checklist before you submit to your tutor. And as I said, we will be talking about evidence a lot more later in the presentation. The last step is evaluate. So here we are reflecting on what we did, or we are evaluating what we did. So remember the learning outcome, what you have learned related to the evidence. Remember what you did was described in the implementation. You are now telling what the impact was of what you learned. How have you applied what you learned? What was the learning outcome for you? And you did not describe what you did in this case. So this is the impact of the learning, and you identify future learning needs. So then we go back to the cycle and you will reflect again because you have a new learning need. So important for evaluation, you have to show us or tell us how you applied the knowledge that you've gained. And you have to give us an example of this applied knowledge, and you have to identify a future learning need. But we will talk about this again, and you will see in the example as well when Dr. Hubert continues with that. So the criteria again, we aim for a 3. So you have to address all 4 to get a 3. What I have learned in terms of the competency standard, how the learning has influenced my practice. You've provided an example of how you applied your learning in a new situation, and you've identified a future learning need. And interns do struggle with this one. Remember, for example, if you provide us with an example of how you applied it, an intern will say, I made a mixture, I compounded a mixture, and a few days later, I was able to compound that same mixture. But you have to tell us how you applied the compounding knowledge that you've gained in a new situation. So make sure that you follow the guidelines of the criteria, but you will see more about that in the example. So the checklist again, so you can see for each phase you have a checklist and you have assessment criteria. So make sure to use them effectively to evaluate your own submission before you submit. So there you can see we're just back at the cycle just to focus the whole portfolio evidence activity. So we will reflect, we will plan, we will implement, and we will evaluate. And that is the 4 steps of the cycle. And then we will now talk about the evidence, which is a very important part of your portfolio of evidence. So first of all, I just want to go back, and Tabang has spoken about this. I just want to show you the stepwise approach for the CPD that you need to do. So first of all, we have our annual declaration. You have to select the domain. You have to select the competency standard. You know now what behavioral statements are. You can make sure that you address the behavioral statements. You'll go onto Pharmacy Council's website and you will start your cycle. You will complete your CPD activity. You will submit it to your tutor for online verification. Your tutor verifies and submit. And lastly, you will check for feedback once the results have been released. Just to focus yourselves and to make you aware of your planning, you now know that the plagiarism software has been introduced as well, and you can see that you have to wait for your feedback. So you can see it's very important between step 4 and 5 to plan your CPD. We all know that the power might be off or the system might be slow. So do not submit your entry on the last day, 2 hours before the deadline. Make sure that you provide sufficient time to do this whole stepwise process for each portfolio of evidence activity. So you can see there we've spoken about it should be relevant to your practice. We've spoken about the 4 steps, and you know about the tutor verification. So now, once you've chosen your competency standard, you know which one you want, you've read the behavioral statement, you decide on the appropriate evidence, and you will now follow through. And I cannot stress the checklist and the assessment criteria checklist enough for you guys, because that is what we as assessment moderators also use to evaluate your CPD, or your portfolio of evidence. So if you've already evaluated it and made sure that everything is there that should be there, you will definitely be competent. So requirements, Tabang has spoken about this. You need to submit 6 portfolio of evidence entries, 1 from each domain. And you remember in 5, you have to submit 5.3. You have to be successful in all 6 of them. And then the next, please do not submit all 6 at once. What we usually advise interns is maybe submit 1 or 2 after the workshop. Sometimes there's a silly mistake. Sometimes there's something that you do that you can easily fix. Just get some feedback from your assessor and your moderator to see if you're on the right track. If you were, then great, submit the next ones. If there were small mistakes, something that you missed, fix it, resubmit, and then use that information for your future submissions. So please do not submit all 6 at once. Just get a feel for the system, get some feedback, make sure you're on the right track before you submit all of them. So for each domain and competency standard, read through all the behavioral statements carefully. And now this is where the 75% comes in. If there's 1 to 3 behavioral statements within a competency standard, you have to provide evidence for all 3 of the behavioral statements. If there are 4 or more behavioral statements, you have to provide evidence for at least 75% of the behavioral statements. But what I always advise my interns is aim for all the behavioral statements. Sometimes there's a piece of evidence missing or you haven't annotated properly, and the assessor or moderator might think you haven't addressed this behavioral statement properly, but if you've addressed all of them, then you still meet the 75% requirement. So if at all possible, aim for 100%, even if there are more than 4 behavioral statements. And please consult your manual regularly to get the correct information. Very important, no group activities are allowed, and every portfolio of evidence activity must reflect your own work. So please do your own portfolio of evidence activity, design your own poster, make your own, do your own compounding. We have seen the same photographs submitted by interns in the same facility, but please do your own work. Now we get to the evidence. The evidence is very important, and the criteria for your evidence is very important, and you have to make sure that you address all of them in your evidence. So the criteria for evidence, it should be annotated, which is very important. Well, all of them is very important, but we'll look at annotation specifically in more detail. It should be current, it should be valid, it should be authentic, and it should be sufficient. So first of all, let's look at annotated. So what is the annotation of evidence? The annotation of evidence is the way in which you give meaning to something that you have included in your evidence. If you think about a page from the GPP, if you just submit that page and you haven't given any indication, you haven't written anything on that page, nobody knows why it is included there. What is the meaning of that page if you haven't given meaning through annotation? So what is it? It's a mechanism for you to give meaning to evidence. It should be legible and easy to read and understand. It should justify why you've included this page. It must be planned, and it must link to the behavioral statement. So every piece of evidence, you should tell us why you've included it, why is it important, and how you used that. For example, if it's a piece of legislation, tell us, I used this to evaluate the prescription. Show us how you interacted with that page and what you did with the information on that page. So annotation isn't merely labels, it's not single words, it's not scribbles, and it should link to the behavioral statement. The evidence must tell the story of how you gained a skill, how you learned new behavior. And when we go further now with annotation, you will clearly understand what we mean about it should be meaningful and planned. Otherwise, it doesn't give any justification for the evidence. So if you look at the date of the prescription, so say there's a date on the prescription and you annotate, this is the date of the prescription. Does that have meaning? Everybody knows this is the date of the prescription, but you as an intern should tell the assessor and the moderator, why is the date of this prescription important to my activity? Say, for example, you used Regulation 33 to evaluate your prescription. And there we know prescription is only valid for 30 days. So then you will tell the assessor, this is the date. For a prescription to be valid, it must be presented within 1 month after it was written. So therefore, this prescription is valid. And if you compare the two, you can clearly see the one is just a label, this is the date, and the other one gives justification and meaning for the identification of the date. There we have an example of an invoice for that pharmacy received, and you can see it's really nondescript. We don't know why the annotation is there. Why is the name of the pharmacy important? Why is the batch number important? Why is the date important? So there's labels, but the context is missing. The importance and the justification is not included. So this is another example. And you don't have to put your annotations, you don't have to type it. But if you do write it, please make sure that it is neat and legible. So this one is a little bit neater, but do you think there's sufficient justification and guidance on why these aspects are important? So if you just think about that. So is this good? It's neater, but I don't know if it's necessarily better. So now we go to the last one, and this is what we mean with justification and meaning. You can see on the top right-hand corner, it is linked to 3.2E, the end phase of the procurement of medicine. So now we have it linked to a behavioral statement. So now it's justified. And then you can see I checked the name of the pharmacy on the parcel to confirm that it is indeed for my pharmacy. So just tell us why you checked everything. Why have you indicated things on the invoice? So I checked the medication to make sure that it is the correct medication. Is what is on the invoice what is actually in the box? The batch number, why is the batch numbers important? It's for batch traceability. So if you look at this invoice, we can see why the intern included it. It links to a behavioral statement, and the intern identified what was used on this page to ensure that the stock was received properly. So you can see the meaning of the annotation. It provides justification, it provides guidance, and it tells a story. And that is what your evidence should do. It should tell your story to show us how you gained a new behavior or a skill. So what do you think about the quality of this? And you can clearly see it gives a lot more information and some clarity on why this was included. The next thing is current, very important. Please do not include anything from your undergraduate years, research that you did as a fourth year student, or any activity that you did at a clinic. It must be current and it must be collected within the internship period. So after you have been registered as an intern. Valid. The evidence must pertain to a specific competency standard, so it should actually prove what you want it to prove. Please make sure that if you have any calculation errors or factual errors or something that is not true, the evidence is deemed not valid and therefore not successful. So there you can see if the evidence is not valid, the other four criteria does not count. So an example there, if the competency standard is about how to fry an egg and your evidence shows how crispy is your bacon, it has no value. So the evidence should be related to the competency standard. For example, if you include a prescription as evidence, but your activity is about pharmacist-initiated therapy, it will not be successful because there is no prescription that should be included in pharmacist-initiated therapy. So you can see the evidence should be valid and related to the activity that you have selected. Authentic, the evidence should be your own work, and your tutor then verifies that it is your own work. And the verification is done online, and the tutor should make sure that it is your own work. And remember, no group activities, as we've stated previously. We've spoken about sufficient. If there are 4 or more behavioral statements, you should cover at least 75% of them. That is 3. And if there are more than 4, you have to do 75%. It's very important. The same piece of evidence cannot be used for more than one competency standard. So you cannot submit the same prescription for 5.3 that you submit for 3.5 that you submit for 2.2. So you have to have new evidence for every portfolio of evidence, but one piece of document or one piece of legislation, for example, can be used for more than one behavioral statement. So within one activity, a piece of evidence can link to more than one behavioral statement, but one piece of evidence cannot be used in more than one domain. So do not submit the entire document or a whole act. For example, an intern will say, I consulted the regulations of the Medicines Act, and they include the whole regulation, which is 86 pages, when in fact they only wanted to apply Regulation 3 or Regulation 33. So we then just want that regulation with an annotation where you found that piece of applicable legislation. Do not add evidence that may have clauses for intellectual property, and that is very important for, or especially for our interns in manufacturing. If there is intellectual property and you're not allowed to use that, please select something else, but make sure that you provide sufficient evidence, and if you're not allowed to do it or use it, submit something else. So for sufficient, it must be enough. The evidence should be, there should be sufficient pieces of evidence or documents to show that you have achieved the behavior or the skill. And it's very important, it's not the quality or the quantity of the evidence. It's not how many documents you've included, it's the quality. So as I said, one piece of evidence can relate to more than one behavioral statement. So carefully think about what you are going to submit. Make sure that it's enough to show that you've gained a skill, and make sure that you address at least 75% of the behavioral statements. So just for a little activity, there is a poll. I think council will do the poll for us. So if you choose a competency standard and there are 8 behavioral statements, for how many behavioral statements do you need to provide evidence for? So I'm sure the poll will be copied into the chat or will be provided to you guys. I'll just give a few seconds for council to take over the screen, and then you can have a look. We can see. Okay, so there we have our poll. Oh, great. You can see if there are 8 behavioral statements, 75% will get us up to 6. So great. All of you will be able to make sure that you provide sufficient evidence for the behavioral statements, and that is very important. So you guys now know, for if you selected a one with 8, we want evidence for at least 6 of the behavioral statements. If possible, aim for the 8, but make sure that you at least have 6 behavioral statements covered. Now we're going to talk a little bit about evidence. And if you think about evidence, there's such a lot of evidence that you can include in your activity, but just make sure that the document that you include actually shows the skill you want to show us. For example, if you want to show us that you can compound, we would expect to see a photograph of you doing compounding. If you want to prove that you've spoken to another healthcare provider, a photograph with you with the phone next to your ear will probably not be good evidence. So think about what would be good evidence for what you want to prove. So if we talk about photographs, we say add a date stamp. There are a lot of devices that can include a date. Otherwise, just annotate the date on the photograph. You have to identify yourself. Remember, the assessors and the moderators do not know you. So if you are in the photograph, say, this is me, here I am compounding, here I am presenting, or whatever you are doing, identify yourself, and please make sure that you protect patient confidentiality on photographs. Pages from the SAMF or EDL, or what the case may be, please tell us which edition of the reference you used, which page, which section, and not the whole document. And tell us, what does it show? If you, for example, include a patient information leaflet, Annotate, say, I looked at the dosage, I looked at the contraindications. So circle what you used or make an arrow or write on it. My patient is 6 years old and this is safe for children from 2 years or what the case may be. But use the document, annotate the document, and remember, justify the document that you've used. If you just scan in a page or include a page from the GPP and made no annotations, the only thing that it shows is that you are able to scan. It provides no meaning, it provides no justification, and it's usually then not linked to a behavioral statement. And if you can remember from the invoice, you can see how important the story is. Delivery notes, we looked at an invoice and with it comes a delivery note. If you signed a delivery note, tell us, this is my signature and I signed, I counted the boxes, I counted the cold chain, I received 7 of them. Why is the signed delivery note included as evidence? Is it part of the stock receipt cycle or why is it there? Again, just as identifying yourself, identifying your signature. If there are 2 or 3 signatures on a document, tell us why there are 2 or 3 or 4 signatures on and which one is yours and why is it also included on this piece of evidence. So, as I said previously, put yourself in the assessor or moderator's shoes. If you look at a piece of evidence, look as a evaluator of the evidence and ask yourself, can I clearly see why is it included? What's the justification for this to be included in the CPD? And if that's clear, then include it. Otherwise, adjust your annotations to make sure that you provide meaning to the piece of evidence. So evidence, please make sure high glossy photos that it is actually that you can see. Sometimes if it's high gloss, it is just a dark black piece of evidence. You cannot see what is done. Make sure that it is not uploaded upside down. The evidence must be clear and legible, and especially your annotations. Please submit your evidence in one PDF document. It's very difficult to follow your story and to see exactly what the storyline is and what you did as an intern if it's in 5 or 6 documents and the annotations are all over the place and it's not in a particular order. So please, one PDF document with all the evidence in a logical way presented to tell your story. Very important, as you've seen, the evidence only has meaning if it's annotated, if it's justified, and if it's linked to a behavioral statement. Then we can see the story, we know how you gained the skill or how you gained the knowledge and why you have included it. Identify your own signature. So tell us where you signed, what's the relevance of your signature, why did you sign this, or why did the tutor or the pharmacist sign this? And remember, the assessor doesn't know you, so you have to identify yourself, your signature, and everything that was done. Another important thing for your evidence, please make sure when you include blocks and you convert to PDF that the blocks do not move. It happens sometimes with some of the interns' evidence, then patient confidentiality is not yet protected or not protected anymore. And then automatically you are not successful in your activity. So now we are thinking about what kind of evidence, and when interns start with their CPDs, they find this challenging sometimes, but just think about this. And that's why it's important to look at your manual, think about your activity, and think about what can I include, and be creative. Think out of the box. There's many things that you can include. What kind of evidence will prove that I gained this skill? So, for example, if you're providing information to a patient. So what do you think can be included there? So maybe we have a prescription where you needed to counsel a patient, so we will include that. You weren't sure about a few things, so you consulted the patient information leaflet. You wanted some additional information, so you looked at the SAMF or the EDL. You weren't sure if the prescription was valid, so you had to consult Regulation 33. So there you can see, start thinking, but remember, look at the behavioral statements, what we wanted to prove, to see if it will be valid to include in this activity. For example, if you are thinking about a group, you are providing evidence of a group information session. What can we look at there? Maybe our attendance register, maybe the presentation that you created, or the poster, or the pamphlet, the reference material you used, the feedback that you received from the audience. So you can see, if you start thinking about the activity, think about the behavioral statements and what you want to prove, you can start thinking about what the evidence should be to actually prove that, or to show that you have attained, for example, presentation skills or public health campaign skills, or what the case may be, depending in which domain you are working. Remember, only one presenter, so we would want an attendance register with your name at the top, the date, where it was presented, when it was presented, and it should reflect the knowledge and the understanding of the audience if we have a feedback form there. So did they understand the information? Was it clear? Did you have an activity? Did you have a quiz? You can see there's so many things you can include, and really be creative with the evidence that you include. And very important, whatever you include, remember to annotate. So justify why it's there, explain the relevance, and link it to a behavioral statement. And really, as an intern, you can, we get the most amazing CPD entries with an intern that was just thinking, what will I include in this? And there are a lot of things that you can include. Attendance register, as I said, a presenter name, a date, a venue, and remember patient confidentiality on attendance registers. So again, if you are consulting a patient, what kind of evidence? A patient history, for example, a prescription, a request from a patient, a blue copy, a label, reference material, either the PI, the professional information leaflet, the SAMF, whatever you used. Just make sure that it is valid and that it links to that it links to a behavioral statement. And as I said, if this was pharmacist-initiated therapy, a prescription would not be good evidence because it's not valid for pharmacist-initiated therapy, because if you have a prescription, the prescriber initiated the therapy. So your references, please make sure that it's scientific, not Wikipedia or ChatGPT or whatever, wherever you can find it. Make sure that it is of good quality scientific resources. It must be annotated. Again, you can see it's very important. Provide justification, provide relevance, and link it to the behavioral statements. If you take pages from books or documents, please the edition where you found it, the section, or the page number. If you're consulting a prescriber, for example, provide us the reason for the consultation, the prescription if you found about a possible interaction or prescription that's not valid, or whatever the case may be, the reference material that you used. The patient said they are allergic to something. You used the reference material to see there was a cross sensitivity or what the case may be. Proof that you phoned the doctor. Maybe somebody can verify, or the doctor can give you a letter, depending on what the situation is in the facility where you are. And then you can give the time of the consultation or feedback from the prescriber, or if you received a new prescription. So you can see there are a variety of options for you to use as evidence. So other kinds of evidence, if you are in a meeting, so what can you do there? And please remember, just by sitting in a meeting, you haven't gained a skill. We want the agenda, the attendance register, the minutes of the meeting, and very, very important, what was your contribution to the meeting? Did you have to present a section of the meeting? Did you have to find some information, give guidance, or what the case may be? But you cannot only sit in a meeting, you have to have a contribution to use that as evidence. If you are working with data, for example, our academic interns, or you did a research project in your facility, we would want maybe a proposal or the reason for the data collection. We want screening reports. We want to, you can show us how you analyze the data, or what the case may be. So you can see there are various options. And again, we go back to the checklist. So there's your rubric for assessment. Do I have sufficient? So at least 75. Have I annotated my evidence? Does it link to the behavioral statements? Is it clear, readable, not upside down? And I cannot tell you how many times we receive evidence that upside down, and then you know the intern didn't use the checklist and didn't make sure that everything is as it should be. Patient confidentiality, very, very, very important. If patient confidentiality is not protected, the activity is not successful. So evidence, a summary for you guys. You can now see evidence provides proof of what you did. It's not seeing somebody else doing something. It's not reading an article. It's not theory. We see a lot of interns, for example, they select activity where there's a recall of medicine, but then they say there were no recall, but if there was, I would have done it this way. That's not acceptable. If you want to show us that you can do a recall, there has to be an actual medicine recall now while you are an intern. You must convince the assessor that you actually did this. You actually compounded a difficult mixture, or you compounded a powder in an ointment, or what the case may be. You've gained a skill. It must be professional, it must be neat, and it must be clear. So I'm sure you have a better understanding, and it's very important, as I said, please consult your manual, and please, if you need to, go back to this presentation and have a look at what you should do. But I'm sure if you use the checklist and everything that's provided in the manual, you will definitely be successful. Okay, now I'm giving over to Dr. Yubar. She will continue with the next part of the presentation, and I'm just quickly going to go out of the presentation and mute my microphone before Dr. Yubar continues, and then she will go through the next part of the CPD with you guys.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Adele.
Yes, Tabang. Sorry.
Thank you, Rianda. And thank you, Adele. I think we need to take a break now. The time is 10:48. If we can come back at 10:58.
Okay.
Let's see. And 10, yeah, 10:58. Thank you.
Okay. See you
Thank
all.
you. Hello, Rianda,
Yes, Tabang.
over to you.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. I trust that you all have a nice cup of coffee now and are ready for the last part. So now we're going to look at an example of an entry that you can submit. So we give you a trigger incident. I was asked to participate in a public health campaign. And I noticed that the poll is posted in the Q&A section. So if you can just click on that and answer that question, what would be the which domain would you select if you was asked to participate in a public health campaign? Okay, I noticed a lot of you, well, most of you selected domain 1, which is the correct one. Domain 1 relates to public health. I think we can move back to the presentation now. Continue. I'm struggling now. Okay, I'm going to stop control. Adele, will you just continue to the next? Okay. So yes, the relevant domain is domain 1, which is public health. And then the competency standard is then competency standard 1.1, which is the promotion of health and wellness. Okay. So if we go into the manual and we look at the structure of the competency standards, then domain 1 covers public health and 1.1 is the promotion of health and wellness. Remember that you need to take in talking to individual patients does not constitute a public health campaign. It should be focused on the public. So you need to promote health and wellness through the provision of healthcare information and education, and then important to the public and other members of the healthcare team. So not only members of the healthcare team, it should be the public as well, which is important in this case. And you can see there's 4 behavioral statements. Okay, so the third poll, you should choose the most appropriate learning title that was given. Is it participation in COVID-19 health campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital, or promotion of health and wellness, or promotion of COVID-19? If council can please post the poll again, then you can attempt the third poll and the fourth poll. Let's focus on the third one first. Which of these 3 is the most appropriate learning title? So we can see you're still answering there. And again, the majority of you indicated that it is participation in a COVID-19 health campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital. So you can see it is related to the competency standard, and it is related to the setting that you are working in. And it is not just the copy of the competency standard, which is promotion of health and wellness, and it is not just what the topic is. It is the whole what you are going to do and where you are going to do that. I think we should continue to the fourth poll, where you needed to indicate the most appropriate or which is the best learning need based on the competency standard. You can see again the majority of you indicated that it is the second one. I need to learn how to provide advice and participate in a public health campaign. And it's not just I need to learn how to teach. That would be more relevant to 6.2, where you need to provide advice or where you need to provide education and training. And it is not only I need to learn how to speak in public. So you can see it is about participating in a public health campaign and to provide advice. Okay, let's move again back to the okay. So if we look at the example, the reflection, I just want to make a disclaimer. You can see that the working example is outdated. This is just as an example on how to complete it. So we don't want to see any COVID-19 health campaigns this year, as we are no longer in or dealing with COVID-19 in such an extent that we were in 2020. So the learning title then we said is participation in COVID-19 health campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital. What triggered your learning need? And it is purely that my pharmacy manager asked me to participate in a COVID-19 health campaign, and I did not know what this entailed. So I needed to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns, and I hope to be familiar with the steps required. So you can see you address that you provide the trigger, you provide what you need to learn, and you also provide what you hope to achieve after you have addressed this learning need. Okay, if we move on, let's go to the planning. So that is the second step in the cycle. So I plan to make a poster using relevant sources. Then you list the sources, either the National Department of Health, the World Health Organization policies, Council's website, and remember to add the relevant details. If it is from a policy or a act or legislation, the chapter, the page number, the sections is important. I will include information on health promotion. You link it to behavioral statement A, healthy lifestyles, and disease prevention and control. So you see there, you link the information that you will provide or will include, you link it to a behavioral statement. I will then verify my poster with my tutor. I will use the poster in my health campaigns. I will get feedback from the participants or the attendees by making use of an attendance register. And I link that to behavioral statement D. I will obtain a participation letter from the pharmacy manager or from the unit manager or from the campaign manager. I plan to participate in COVID-19 screening using a screening tool, which I also link to behavioral statement D, and why I did all this in order to be able to participate in a public health campaign. So you see, you say what you want to do, how you're going to do it, what will you include, and you can see all of it is in the future tense. Then you say, you link it to the behavioral statements, and then you also say why you did included this, or what is the reason for the planning that you have provided. Now we move to the implementation. So this is then the part where you actually have done the campaign. So I consulted the following sources, you list them. You can see there the highlighted part, which is linked to the evidence and the behavioral statement. What did I do? I formulated the poster to use in my campaign. I presented the poster at the COVID-19 screening area at the entrance of the hospital on a busy outpatient day. And you link it to evidence E, which is then your attendance register. remember your patient confidentiality, that you maintain that. You link it to behavioral statement D. And I did screening using the screening tool. There you can include the results that you may have obtained by using the screening tool. If it was temperature control or it was um, signs and symptoms that you noted, you can include that. And then I received the feedback from my supervisor and obtained the letter of participation from the health and safety manager. And that would be then evidence G, and I link that to behavioral statement 1.1D. It is important at the where you link to the behavioral statements that it is you don't provide blanket linking. So you don't say at the end this links to A to D. You must put in the specific parts where you have linked it. Okay, we move to another poll. And here you need to provide us some of the examples of evidence that you think will be suitable for this competency standard. So we have talked about through the whole implementation phase. So which evidence do you think will be suitable? If you can just click again on the link. So we can see the poster was a big answer that most relevant answer that most of you have provided. Policies and guidelines, articles, GPP, pamphlet, photo of the poster, surveys, social media posts. So there's a lot of ideas that you have. Feedback. Yes, you can have a feedback survey that you ask the participants to complete. Articles that you can use to get your information from. Remember, then you must just annotate that article or that website and say and indicate this part I've used to get information on disease prevention, and then link it to the behavioral statement and link it to the poster where you have used that information. Okay. So possible evidence that we can use is then source documents, specific with annotations. So the GPP, which chapter, which page number did you use, health education tools that you made, maybe a poster, a pamphlet, or a presentation if it was in an area where you can present to the public, a letter of participation. Important that your role is highlighted in that letter. So we need to be able to see what was your role, what did you do. The attendance register, remember Mrs. Nodia said the attendance register must have a date, the name of the presenter, the name of the topic that you're going to address, and the place where did this take place. Remember, patient confidentiality is important. And then where does this fit in above? So how many of the behavioral statements was covered? If you look at what we did here, what we included here, make sure that you have covered at least 75%. In this case, then 3 of the 4 behavioral statements. Okay. Then we move to the evaluation of this example. Remember, this is the 4th step. So what was learned? Remember, here you have to ask what you have learned. How did it influence your practice? How did you apply what you have learned? And what would be a future learning need? And a lot of interns struggle with the application part. A lot of times they will say, for example, this was now the COVID-19 campaign. Then the interns will say, 2 weeks later, I participated, or we ran the campaign again, the COVID-19 campaign again, and I was able to participate there. So it should be different from what you've done here. So you can see here the application. I subsequently participated in a diabetic screening day. and I'm more aware of public health issues. So your application should be relevant to the skill that you have learned or obtained, and not the content or the activity that you did. So if you so for example, if it is pharmacist initiated therapy and the patient complained about symptoms of flu, then your application cannot be again 2 days later, I assisted the patient complaining of flu. Then it should be something different. The patient complained about diarrhea or sinus or headache, so it should be something different than what you did just now. Okay, let's move on. So once you have submitted your portfolio of evidence and it's been assessed, you will receive feedback from assessors. Just remember now that there will be feedback sessions later in the year in June and August, I think. There will be feedback sessions where we will give you feedback on the most relevant or the mistakes that you most often made. So what can you expect from the feedback that you will get? There will be comments. The comments will be dated. There will also be positive comments in which we will provide you acknowledgement that you are on the right track. There can also be negative comments, and then we will also give you some pointers on how you can correct or areas that you can fix or what you did wrong. Most often the comments will be focused on the evidence and the annotation of the evidence. So make sure that your evidence is properly annotated, and then use the comments as guidelines for next entries. Even if your entry that you have submitted is successful, go and look at the comments to see where you can improve. Because sometimes your evidence is maybe borderline, it's not fully sufficient, but you have still passed, you have still been successful. Then you can use that comments in order to improve your following your subsequent submissions that you still need to provide. So if you were found to be not yet successful, you need to resubmit your portfolio of evidence within that specific domain. And we treat each resubmission as a standalone activity and as a new submission. So don't just resubmit. Make sure that you start with a new entry unless your assessor has recommended that you can correct it. So therefore you have to look at the comment section. If it was only breach of patient confidentiality and you can fix that, it is fine. If you did compounding and you made a mistake there, you had the incorrect expiry date or you made calculation errors, then you cannot just fix that and resubmit it again. You will have to start over, because remember now that mixture that you have done, that compound that you made, you have already dispensed it, it's gone, you cannot fix that. So then you will need to start over and do a completely new submission. Look at the guidelines and for the conditions of resubmission. If you feel that you were treated unfairly or you think you should be successful, then you can contest the outcome. Look, Tabang did spoke about that, and then there's also a timeline for that within 1 month of the release of the results. So make sure that you stick to that. And important, keep in mind the number of submissions that you need to be successful in to write the exam, the intern exam. So you need to submit early and you need to submit regularly. We've stated it previously as well. Don't wait and submit all 6 at the same time. And to prevent the need to further resubmit, make sure that you follow the assessors or the moderator's recommendations and comments. And very important, your portfolio of evidence entries is sent to the same assessor every time, even if you resubmit. if Mrs. Nadia receives your first entry for assessment, she will receive all your entries for assessment. So if you are assigned an assessor, you will keep that assessor until you are successful and your CPDs or your portfolio of evidence is completed. Don't just resubmit without attending to the reasons for the entry being not yet successful. And the assessors and the moderators can see the previous submissions and the comments. So we can see if you changed something or not, if you just resubmitted or not, and what the comments we made were. So make sure that you address those comments and that you actually start over and do a new entry. Let's talk about professionalism. Remember, a pharmacist is a professional job, so you need to act professional, and therefore plagiarism is a very important aspect that you need to keep in mind. Tabang spoke about the plagiarism software that is implemented. You can see that you can look in your manual for more information on that. Important AI generated content is not allowed. The CPD activity is a personal activity because it's something that you needed to learn, not something that chat needed to learn. So you should not. It's not allowed to submit AI generated content, and obviously it should reflect your own work. If the assessors find any irregularities, you will be referred to the SAPC legal department and you will receive penalties. And they will be applied and they will be severe. It might even lead to that you need to redo your whole internship year, and you don't want that. And believe me, as assessors and moderators, we pick up on irregularities. We pick up on similar submissions submitted. We pick up on fraudulent or evidence that is created and not that actually happened. So falsified evidence, we pick up on that. And remember that this is more than just a hurdle. It is an opportunity for you to further develop in your professional career. So see it as an opportunity to learn. Confidentiality, we spoke about that as well. Confidentiality is very important. Make sure that it is maintained at all times. And not only on prescriptions, also look at trailer labels, Schedule 6 registers, the blue copy that you submit, patient file, photos, attendance registers. So make sure that nowhere should a patient be identifiable. And if you breach patient confidentiality, you are automatically not yet successful. And important, confidentiality applies only to patients. So if you provide training and education, which is Competence Standard 6.2, to pharmacy personnel or to nurses or to doctors, then confidentiality do not apply to them, because we can go onto the HPCSA website and look up a doctor. We can go onto the SIPC website and look up a pharmacist or an assistant. So it is not applicable to staff attendance registers. And make sure not to blank out all your evidence. Sometimes if a patient provide a signature, you can clearly make out the name and the surname, then you need to black that out. If you can't make out the surname of the person, then you don't need to blank out the signature. Also make sure that the name is completely obscured. As you can see here on the slide, on the right-hand side, you can still make out the Smith there, so don't just scribble over it. Make sure that you cannot see the patient's name. Just beware if you make use of a Koki pen. Sometimes interns do that. They use a black marker to strike out the names, and the moment they scan it in, you can still see that those names on the attendance register. So make sure that it is completely obscured. Okay, so you are now ready to start the stepwise approach to completing your portfolio of evidence entries. Remember, for step 1, you need to choose your domain, and then you need to choose the competency standards. But first, we're going to look at some tips that can help you and assist you in choosing the most appropriate competency standard from each domain. And we have compiled this decision-making aid, so you will see that it is either recommended that the competency standard is possible, or it may be challenging. If it's recommended, it is a good choice, and you should present no problems for any intern to complete that. If we say that it is a possible uh, activity, then you should consider it very carefully and only choose it if you're able to collect valid and sufficient evidence. If we say this competency standard is challenging, then we actually say avoid this one, because it will be extremely difficult then for you as an intern to complete this activity and provide sufficient evidence. Remember that the competency standards and the domains is based on what pharmacists should be able to do. So there are certain competency standards that is not suitable and not applicable, and you will not be able to do them as an intern. So make sure that your chosen competency standard is appropriate for your practice setting and that you can do it where you are going to work. Okay, so let's look at domain 1. There are only 2 recommended competency standards, and that is 1.1 and 1.6. Just remember 1.1, it's public health, so you need to include the public. And for 1.6, we need to see what screening activity you did. Do not do 1.5 for that. You will not be successful with that one. For domain 2, we recommend that you do 2.1 and 2.2 or 2.6, which is pharmacist-initiated therapy. Remember, for 2.2, you must make sure that you have sufficient evidence. There's a lot of behavioral statements underneath 2.2, and only attempt 2.8 if you are actually involved in a registered clinical trial. Otherwise, do not do 2.8. For domain 3, 3.4 and 3.5 are the recommended competency standards. 3.4, make sure that you cover all the dispensing activities. Again, there's a lot of behavioral statements, and a lot of the times interns do not have sufficient evidence because they think if you calculate the number of tablets that you need to dispense for a 1 month usage, then it is a pharmaceutical calculation, which it is not. If the doctors say you must take 1 tablet daily for a month and you need to calculate the number of tablets, that's not pharmaceutical calculations. The same with extemporaneous compounding. Remember, reconstitution of an antibiotic is not compounding. So make sure about that one. And for 5, you need to include a discussion on the application of pharmaceutical principles. And you can do bulk or extemporaneous compounding as long as we can see how you have applied pharmaceutical principles. 3.1 is only for interns in manufacturing. If we move to domain 4, the recommended competency standard is 4.6, where you need to apply policies and apply SOPs. Here, it is important that you differentiate between policies and SOPs. And in your intern manual on page 40, there is a definition of what is a policy, and there's also a list of policies. Remember, the GPP is not a policy. For domain 5, you need to go, 5.3 is the compulsory competency standard that you need to submit. You're not allowed to select any of the others. And make sure that you show us how you have applied the relevant legislations and how you have applied the code of conduct. If you just include it, it doesn't show us how you have applied it. So that is important there. And then domain 6, 6.2 is the recommended competency standard. It can be used for training pharmacist assistants in the workplace as according to their scope of practice. It can also be for other pharmacy personnel. 6.3 is possible, but then only if you are involved in formal training of undergraduate pharmacy students. So if you are an academic intern, this might be a competency standard that you might address or that you might attempt. And then also, the research one, 6.6 is also one of the recommended activities. 6.7 is not possible. It cannot be completed by interns because for 6.7, you need to supervise other researchers, and that is not possible. So now you are ready to complete the CPD cycle. Remember, there's 4 steps and you need to complete all of them. And now we're going to look at some guidelines pertaining to some of the evidence you might need for selected competency standards from each domain. So again, we start with domain 1, and I'm just going to focus on 1.1 here, which is the recommended competency standard. You must show how you have provided the information and how you have, or the poster that you've used to promote health. As we said, evidence could include an attendance register. And remember, it is not one-on-one, it's a group, it's a public campaign, so not individual patients in a pharmacy. And don't say only two people attended your screening, then clearly that public health campaign was not successful. So you need to have at least 10 to 15 people. If we look at domain 2, a lot of, or the majority of interns submit 2.2 and 2.6, although 2.1 is also recommended. But for 2.2, remember, it's important that we see a counseling plan. That's one of the behavioral statements that you need to address. We need to see patient feedback on the understanding. Did the patient understand the counseling that you provided? You can add a tutor statement. And a lot of the times interns fail to indicate how sensitive issues were handled. So that is also one of the behavioral statements that you need to provide us. And just remember, the first behavioral statement for 2.2 is that you need to show or provide evidence for the need to provide counseling. And that is not your need, it is the patient's need. Why did the patient needed this counseling? So you need to show us how did you determine that. If we look at 2.6, the pharmacist-initiated therapy, it could include the information pamphlet relating to the condition. Often interns fail to provide a referral letter. That's also one of the behavioral statements, is to refer a patient when necessary. So there that you include a referral letter. If your facility or your pharmacy where you're working have a referral letter, include that. Say to whom is this referral letter addressed and the reason for the referral. Why did this patient need referral? If we look at domain 3, we said that 3.1 is possible for interns in manufacturing, but here the issue of intellectual property might be an issue. So be aware of that. And remember to include quality assurance documents if you try 3.1. If you do 3.5, which is one of the recommended competency standards, you need to include evidence to show us your understanding of your pharmaceutical knowledge. And very important, the expiry date for any extemporaneous mixture that you made should not exceed 30 days. Some of them even only have a 7 days expiry date. So make sure about that. Show your calculations, show the SOP, show every step that you done while doing the compounding. Don't just, and obviously the final product is important. So show us how your understanding of pharmaceutical knowledge. Okay, domain 4, we said 4.6 is the recommended one. And important, you need to show us how you have applied both the policy and the SOP in order to achieve policy development, not just a SOP. And again, page 40 in the manual, you can get a list of possible policies and also a definition of what is a policy. And remember, as I've stated, the GPP is not a policy. It is a guiding document. And it's important that you link every step of the SOP, that you show us how you have applied every step of the SOP and the policy. Okay, moving on to domain 5, 5.3, the compulsory competency standard that you need to submit. You must include annotated extracts of applicable acts, legislation, and code of conduct. Behavioral statement C say that you must keep abreast of legislation changes. It means you must use the most current and the most recently amended legislation. Where will you look for that legislation? You can add that. Remember your annotated professional indemnity certificate. And it is stated in the GPP that you should have your indemnity in your own name. So don't provide the indemnity of the hospital complex or the pharmacy where you work. That professional indemnity, it must be personal, it must be in your own name. And an application for indemnity does not mean that you have indemnity insurance yet. So make sure that it is the actual certificate to say that you are covered from this date to this date. So make sure about that. And for 5.3, you can include evidence for more than one activity. And remember, 5.3 is not just about Schedule 6 medication, and it's very broad. So you can have more than one activity that you've done in order to show us that you can successfully act professional and ethical in all aspects of pharmacy. For domain 6, we said that 6.2 is the recommended competency standard. You need to include evidence here that training is part of an agreed plan. So what was the training plan that you have compiled with the help of a more experienced colleague? Clarify the role of that person and say who that person is. Remember, we said confidentiality does not apply to healthcare personnel. So you are more than welcome. You should actually say who was that more experienced colleague that helped you. If you do 6.6, the research, to do research, there's two behavioral statements. The one say that you must compile a proposal and indicate the parts of a proposal, and then B is to conduct the research according to the proposal. So in other words, you need to provide us with a complete research project. So you must first show us this is the proposal, this is where I got the information, what should be in a proposal. So here's my list. Here's my proposal, so you can see I have addressed everything. And then for B, here is now where I have actually done the research. So we need to see results. And we also need to see that this proposal or protocol was approved somewhere. Did it need approval from an ethics committee? Did it need approval from the head of the hospital or the pharmacy manager who approved that this research can be conducted? But importantly, we need to see results that you have done the research and then that it was according to the proposal. Let's talk a bit more in detail about competence standard 4.6, which is policy development. Although this is the recommended competency standard, interns typically have trouble with this one. So there are new or extra information in this year's manual to help you to differentiate between what is a policy and what is a SOP. So policy is a set of guidelines, while an SOP is a set of written instructions. So the SOP will tell you, you must clean the working area, and then you must, so it's like a recipe that you need to follow, while the policy is guidelines. And then the list of applicable policies, the national drug policy, sanitation policy of the pharmacy, health and safety policy of the industry or the pharmaceutical industry where you're working, security policy, where should you enter every morning the pharmacy, post-exposure policy, and then there's also HIV and AIDS policy. So this is just an example. Chapter 7 of the manual indicate the applicable policies, and as I've said twice before, the GPP is not a policy. These are some of the challenges that interns experience, and this was identified by tutors. This is from the Limpopo tutors' perspective. So council asked certain tutors to give council some experiences, how they experience the interns and the challenges. And you will see that we put this slide in just to make you aware of it and to make sure that you do not experience the same challenges. So be aware of communication. You need to communicate with your tutor. That is very important. You need to be adaptable. I think you are all now working for almost 2 months. So I know it takes time to adapt in a new environment, but you need to show that adaptability. You need to be able to manage your time. Yes, you are working now, but you also need to focus on completing your internship in order to register as a pharmacist. And therefore, you need to have good time management and time management skills. So ask for help. If at any time you see that you are struggling or you realize that you don't know how or what to do, ask your tutor or ask a mentor to help you so that you don't experience the same challenges as other interns. And finally, to end this session, remember during this period as an intern, you need to learn new things. Every day you will learn things. Even if I locum, and I locum quite often, I almost every time learn something new. So see the opportunities to learn, create the opportunities to experience and to develop yourself, and then you will succeed. And you must become a true lifelong learner. If you can just see if you can spot the opportunities, you will become a true lifelong learner. Now we ask that you please complete the attendance register and complete the survey. Again, council will post it in the Q&A and in the chat box. So please complete the workshop survey, which also then act as attendance register. And I think from my side, that is all. We will have chance now for questions and answer session. I've noticed there is already a lot of questions posted. So we will then move to the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thanks, Rianda. We have posted the attendance survey, the attendance register and survey in the Q&A section. We will have questions and answers now. If you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A section, or if you're joining us on YouTube, please type them in the comment section. We will get to them. All right, the first question, can I do my 400 hours at more than one pharmacy?
Okay. Thank you, Teddy. We prefer the interns to do 400 hours in one pharmacy, unless there are really specific reasons why they need to do it in two different facilities. Then that can be approved based on the reasons behind. Thank you.
Sorry, Ned, can I just add?
Yes, come on.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Taban. So if an intern then has space to do the 400 hours in more than one pharmacy, it can be done as long as it's done they ensure that they do that in 5 consecutive days. So there shouldn't be a break in terms of the 5 consecutive days. So they can't do 3 days, 2 days, or 1 day there. It needs to be 5 consecutive days at whatever place that they do their 400 hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from YouTube. For academic interns, is the tutor who will send you the progress reports? I think it should be who is the tutor who will send the progress reports?
Okay. Thank you, Nat. Yes, the progress report is supposed to be submitted online, and that can only be done by the tutor. And when they are doing the 400 hours, the supervising pharmacist has also to submit a progress report for that purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to make sure, if I want to write the August exam and I submit my last CPD by the 1st of August, I will be allowed to, as long as I'm successful in 3 entries and submitted 6 entries.
Okay. Yes. So if an intern is on his 6th month of internship, as long as they have submitted 6 entries and they are successful in 3 and have met other requirements like submission of the progress reports, then will be allowed to book for the exams. Megam, we can add. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to add, thank you, Metabang. So we have published in the manual that in terms of the booking for the exam, the bookings close a month before the exam, with late booking closing 14 days before the exam. So an intern that would submit their last CPD entry by the 1st of August, the exam is on the 5th and 6th, they will be late for the August exam. So they need to have submitted all the 6 CPD entries by the time of the booking for the exam. Otherwise, they would be late. Thanks.
Maybe to add on that, and I've also on if the interns can go check on the POE submission deadlines, the last deadline before the exam is highlighted in orange like color. So they should know that anything that is submitted after that date, then it won't qualify them to sit for the exam. Like for the coming exam in March, the interns are supposed to submit on the 24th of February. So for this cycle, then they are out. They won't be able to sit for the March exams. Thank you.
If I submit 2 CPDs at once, will I get feedback for both at the same time or just one?
Thank you for the question. You will receive feedback for both of them.
I wanted to please inquire, how can our tutors submit 3 progress reports before the August exam when the website states our tutor needs to submit a 12, 24, and 36-week progress report? But if one starts in January, a 36-week report will be in September only. Please provide clarification.
So I can take that, Metabang. So the
Yes,
interns can refer to page 5 of the manual. It states that with regards to the 3 progress reports, it's the 12 weeks personal and professional development. So for the 12 weeks, there's 2 reports that the tutor submits. And then there's another one for the 24 weeks, which is the personal and professional development report. Thank you.
As a manufacturing intern, how can my tutor submit 9 progress reports if the 3rd progress report is due in September, or are the dates different for manufacturing interns?
And the same response is still applicable. It will be the 2 of the 12 weeks personal and professional development and 1 of the 24 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Kamal. From YouTube, I was registered as an academic intern in November 2024. So I would like to know, which date do I qualify to write my pre-registration examination?
okay, thanks, Nate. They will qualify to sit for the August examination because they should be at least in their 6th month to sit for the exam. If they were only registered in November, then they won't meet the requirement for the March exam. Therefore, they must wait for the August examination. Thank you.
Thanks. I haven't started with my 400 hours. Can I do my annual declaration after completing my 400 hours?
Maybe I can answer. So it's advisable that the intern should start doing the annual declarations now, because once they start with the 400 hours, they are going to do some of the CPD entries there. And if they have not done the annual declarations, they would not be able to submit. Thanks.
When should we start applying for community service? After we have written the exam and submitted all entries?
Okay, thanks, Nat. With regards to the community service, like I said, the process is managed by the Department of Health. So the intern must just check on the ICSP website and they will get more information there. Thank you.
Can you elaborate on linking with behavioral statements on planning? Does that mean you refer to the behavioral statements on planning?
Thank you for the question. Yes, if you, it is like the example that we did, the COVID-19 example. In the planning part, we said, I will create the poster that I will present at the health campaign day, and you link it to behavioral statement D. So yes, you need to link or refer them in the planning to the behavioral statements. I'm not sure if I've answered that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please show where we can access the Section 22A legislation and how to include it in our CPD?
Natalie, I'll start with that one, and then maybe Dr. Huber can continue. Legislation you can find, if you look at the Pharmacy Act, you can find that on Pharmacy Council's website. If we talk about Section 22A, you refer to the Medicines and Related Substances Act, that you can find on SAPRA's website. And then depending on which behavioral statement you want to address, you will say, I'm going to consult the Medicines and Related Substances Act, Section 22A, for this reason, and link it to behavioral statement 5.3A, for example, if they want to prove that they can apply the Medicines Act. I don't know if that answers the intern's question, but I do think that's what they meant. Rianda, I don't know if you want to add something.
Thanks, Adele. No, I think you have covered it sufficiently.
If there are 6 behavioral statements, 75% is 4.5. Would we complete 4 or 5 out of the 6 behavioral statements?
Thank you for the question. So this is why we said it is always better to strive to address all the behavioral statements. If, for example, you think that 4 is sufficient, but one of the pieces of evidence is not current, for example, then your evidence is not sufficient. So it's always better to provide evidence for more than 75%. It just gives you that area where something might not be 100% correct and you can still be successful. So don't aim for the least number of pieces of evidence or behavioral statements. Always try and provide evidence for everything. Adele, I'm not sure if you want to add something. Thank you.
Yeah, Rihanna, I would like to add to that. If we get to a 4.5 situation, as the intern mentioned there, you cannot address a half of a behavioral statement. So then you will go one up. Otherwise, you're at 66. You will go to the 5 out of 6. So as Rihanna said, always aim for more, but we won't do a half of a behavioral statement because then you haven't addressed it fully. So you will go one up and do 5 out of the 6.
How long do we have to respond to the feedback?
Natalie, I assume they're asking about the CPD feedback. They will have to look at the timelines so they can fix the submission and look at the timeline and submit it as soon as there's a new submission deadline in the manual. But if they want to skip 1 month and submit the next time, the intern can plan their own submission schedule according to the deadlines in the manual.
Thanks, Adele. This one is a little unclear. I'm starting my internship in February 2025. Would you be able to do community service from February 2025? I think they mean they're starting their internship in February 2025. Would they be able to do community service from February 2026?
Okay, thank you, Ned. Yes, for them to do community service, it means they must have met all the internship requirements and also being released. So if they are released from our side and they are having a placement, then they will be able to start. Yeah.
Thanks, Tabang. Hello, what happens when I submitted a CPD and it shows more than 20% on the Turnitin EULA?
I'm sorry, may you please repeat the question, Ned?
What happens when I submitted a CPD and it shows more than 20% on the Turnitin EULA?
Okay, thank you. So if the similarity report shows that there is more than 20% similarity, so the intern should go back and check those areas that are identified to be similar and encourage them to change them and resubmit for similarity check again. But if they feel that those words or sentences that they were identified as being similar, like it's something that is common to everyone. Let's say the intern is referring to good pharmacy practice and that good pharmacy practice has been picked as similar. I mean, there's no alternative. You have to use that word. So in ways like that, they can ignore and just submit. And they will inform their tutor that they are aware that the similarity score is above the acceptable score, but it's because there's nothing they can do to fix it. Because for now, the Turnitin has not been instructed to exclude certain words. That will be done in the next phase of the development. So that's why I'm saying, in case there's nothing they can do, they must just submit. Yeah, that's what I can say. Thank you.
When will the 2025 400-hour declaration be uploaded?
Sorry,
Oh, you're here. Sorry.
yeah, so the supervising pharmacist has access to the declaration on the online platform. It's not a manual form. So they complete it on the annual platform, on the online platform in the secure site. Thank you.
Thanks, Kamal. If I'm writing my pre-registration exam in August, does the 24th of February deadline affect me, or can I still submit my first CPD after that date?
Natalie, maybe I'll take that one. You can submit anytime. All the deadlines or the submission deadlines in the manual is applicable to you. So it's just the ones in red. If you go to the manual, the ones in red will affect you if you submit on that day to write the exam. But you can submit in March, April, May. Just make sure that you submit 6 well in time to be assessed, to be able to write the August exam, because you have to be successful in 3 of them.
Yes. Thanks, Adele. Maybe just to add on that, if the intern wants to write in, I'm sorry, the question was in October, ne?
In August, Taban?
Oh, it is in August. Okay. So I just wanted to say the submission deadlines that are highlighted in Adele, you said is red, ne? We will stick to red. They mean that the intern will be affected by the late booking penalties. So the intern must take note of that. Thank you.
Thank you. How do you declare your 400 hours on the website?
Annette, thank you for the question. So the supervising pharmacist has access to complete the declaration of 400 hours. It's not the intern that completes it. It's the supervising pharmacist, and they have access on the secure site to submit the 400 hours for the intern.
Thank you. Can one link more than one behavioral statement to one piece of evidence?
Thank you for the question. I'll answer this one. Yes, you can, but don't provide. Just don't say this covers A, B, C, and D, because then it's not acceptable. Then you will need to say why and what information on that piece of evidence addresses which behavioral statement. So, for example, you have a page from the Department of Health website where you found information on disease prevention and control for hypertension. Then you can have information there that addresses A and B and or C. But then you can't just say this addresses A, B, and C. Then you must use that page that you have downloaded, and you must say, so this section here addresses A, this section over here addresses B, and over here we have C. So don't just do it blanket, do it specific for a piece of information on that page. If I hope I answered correctly, maybe Adele can add.
No, Rianda, I agree. It's very important. You can annotate 2 behavioral statements, but again, provide some clarity on how it addresses A or B or C or what the case may be.
Thank you. Just in the interest of time, we are going to close the questions in another minute. So if you do have any burning questions, please type them quickly. The next question, is there a limit on the amount of evidence for one domain?
From an IT perspective, I think you can't upload a document that's too big. But from an assessment point of view, I would caution the intern, try to do relevant, valid, all the necessary evidence that's needed, and not pages and pages and pages of things that's not required. So try to limit yourself to what is absolutely needed to show that you've gained a skill and that's required. But it is a rather big document that you can upload, but be careful. Because if you just throw in everything, the assessor might think that it's not specific enough. You've just added anything for the sake of adding evidence. So make sure that it's justified and it's relevant. And then it can be a rather big document. Randa, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, Adele, I think you've answered sufficiently. Thank you.
Which resources or evidence require a signature, and also should it be a tutor's signature and mine?
Thank you for the question. So resources in the sense of the GPP and websites, etc., I don't think it's necessary to provide a signature. But say, for example, it is an invoice and you want to show that you have received the stock and that you have unpacked it, then obviously your signature. And remember, you need to work under the supervision of a pharmacist. So the pharmacist's signature, it shouldn't be, it's not necessarily that it should be your tutor. Remember, some of the pharmacies, especially institutional pharmacies, have a specific person assigned for receiving of stock. And that person can then sign, but you need to say who that person is that signed. But if it is compounding and you did it under the supervision of a pharmacist, then that person that supervised you should sign that. And then just clearly state who that person is. You can even add a P number for just to be more complete. Thank you.
Thanks. For academic interns, which type of report should the tutor submit if the 400 hours are done in a retail pharmacy?
Thanks, Ned. I'll take that. So, Ned, I would like to refer the interns to section 3.3 of the manual. It's on page 44. So that outlines the type of progress reports that are submitted for each sector. It outlines for academic interns which progress reports are submitted by the supervising pharmacist and the academic tutor, and also for manufacturing pharmacists which progress reports are submitted and for which weeks and the type of progress reports that are submitted per each week stipulated for their internship. So interns can refer to page 44 of the manual. It has all the relevant information regarding the progress reports to be submitted. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just add to that answer? I know some of the academic tutors make screenshots of the reports online, and then they ask the intern just to ask the pharmacist where they are working, just to indicate on that, or they print it out, then ask them just to tick on that what they can do and cannot do, and then the tutor can submit. But that makes extra work for the intern, but it is your internship, so it is your responsibility as well. So that is just another way that some of the academic tutors do it. Thank you.
Sorry, Ned, if I may just add, thanks, Brenda. So we have made provision for the supervising pharmacist to be able to submit the personal and professional development reports online. So they now have access to submit those. The tutor can just verify and submit. So those can be completed online by the supervising pharmacist. So there's no need now for the interns to make screenshots, because the supervising pharmacists have access to the reports now. The tutor can just verify and submit once they're happy with all the reports. Thank you.
Thanks. If my contract expires in December and I started on the 6th of January, will I still be deemed competent in my internship?
Thank you, Annette. So the intern must remember that they are required to complete the 365 days of practical training. So as long as the number of days are 365, then it's fine. But if they are less, then unfortunately, they wouldn't have met the requirement. They will either have to extend the contract, they request for extension, or they find a facility where they can complete the 365 days. Thank you.
The 400 hours you are referring to, are they the same hours we were required to submit since the beginning of our B.Pharm degree as part of work-based learning?
Natalie, I'll take that one. No, it's not the same. The 400 hours you worked as a B.Pharm student was part of your undergraduate curriculum. The 400 hours we are talking about now is a requirement for academic and manufacturing interns to work 400 hours. So it's not the same as the work-based learning hours that you worked undergraduate as part of your B.Pharm qualification. This is additional hours that you have to work if you are in certain sectors.
Can I do my 400 hours somewhere else, like for researchers on campus, for example?
I'll answer this one. Your 400 hours should be in a registered facility that may provide training. So you cannot do it in another researcher's lab. You need to do it in a pharmacy, either retail or institutional.
I have started my master's degree in 2023 and I was only be able to register as an academic intern in November 2024. Can I use my experience that was done the year I registered as a master's student?
Natalie, now I'll take that one. Remember, we said that your evidence should be current. So the evidence that you can use is only the evidence you collected while you are registered as an intern and not as a student.
Thank you. So if I completed my 400 hours at 2 pharmacies, will 2 supervising pharmacists mention the duration I spent at each pharmacy on the website, or will only one pharmacist have that option?
Thanks, Ned. Both supervising pharmacists will have to complete the duration spent by the intern at their pharmacies. Thank you.
Thanks, Kamal. The last question. With the example you just used, if I got evidence from the DOH, how would that prove that I provided information on health promotion or disease prevention? Would I have to give it to the public?
Thank you for that question. Yes, remember, you need to show us how you have provided the information, but you need to get the information somewhere. So you use the Department of Health website to get the information. And then, in additional evidence, you need to show us how you have provided that information to the public. So you cannot just say, this is evidence to prove disease prevention. That will not be sufficient. You will need to have then further evidence that you show us how you have provided that information. I hope I've answered the question now more complete.
Thank you. I think this was the last question, and that's what is bringing us to the end of this workshop. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the interns who managed to join us today, and also to thank the assessors and moderators who were here to assist with the facilitation, and the team from the office. We really appreciate your effort. And we're still having another workshop on the 31st of March 2025. So interns are welcome. If you still want to attend another session, please feel free to do so. And again, tonight we're having a tutor workshop. So please encourage or remind your tutors that the workshop will be taking place this evening from 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. And with those few words, I'm getting this workshop officially closed until we meet again, maybe in March or somewhere in the office. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.